Coming up on Levin TV, the stunning Nunes Memo. Jim Comey is the new deep throat. The DOJ-FBI Soviet-style disinformation campaign, and Obama's ultimate complicity. It all starts now.
This is where freedom rings.
If you believe in America, if you believe in the Constitution empowers us. It's a new day. America's back. America's back, and America's going to get strong again. We're going to defend America, and we're going to defend our interests.
Liberty's voice, Levin TV.
Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin. This is Levin TV on CRTV, Conservative Review TV. Man, I got to tell you something. Obviously, I wasn't here at the end of last week, but I was chomping at the bit for today, right now, so we could talk about the memo. The 4.5-page, or really 3.5-page memo put together by Devin Nunes, among others, and his staff. And it is incredibly revealing. Now, I know you've heard about it from others. Other people have written about it, but you haven't heard about it from me. And this is very, very important to close the loop and to move on from here into other areas that must be explored in connection with this document, because this document opens a lot of doors into what the American people have a right to know. And it confirms much of what we were talking about back in March of last year. What took place here, and we'll get into this, is a vicious, rogue, illegal propaganda campaign that had as its purpose to destroy Donald Trump, and still has as its purpose to destroy Donald Trump, to prevent him from getting elected as president, to undermine his transition, and now to undermine his presidency and remove him from office. At the time, I said they're police state tactics, and they are. Now, why are they police state tactics? Because when you have the most powerful and most important federal law enforcement agency at its highest levels conducting this kind of Soviet-style propaganda campaign, and I can't think of any other way to best describe it, those are police state tactics, and they should concern everybody who believes in this republic, everybody who believes in due process, everybody believes in the electoral process. This is the sort of thing that goes on in the third world. It's the sort of thing that takes place in Russia, ironically enough. And this propaganda campaign and disinformation campaign is going on now. It's continuing. And you have a combination of the Democrat Party, the prior Democrat administration, the Praetorian Guard media, and unfortunately, senior levels of federal law enforcement, not all, but too many. And we haven't even touched on the intelligence agencies yet, because remember how this starts. This starts as a counterintelligence investigation, and now it has leaked over intentionally into a full-fledged criminal investigation by a full-fledged special counsel who has no limits. I mean, Vladimir Putin must be very, very envious of what the Democrats and the media have been able to pull off in this country. Now let's get into the memo. It's titled, let's start on the monitor and work it from there. Go right ahead. Declassified. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act abuses at the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Well, let's stop there. Back on March 2nd, when I went behind my radio microphone, I had literally hours before, not even days before, hours before, started researching, because there were leaks taking place, and the leaks had to come from either the FBI, Main Justice, or intelligence agencies, or all of them. Because there were leaks about FISA applications, they were somewhat imprecise, in second-tier media operations, in some case here and there, speckled into first-tier media operations. But they were there. Again, they weren't ubiquitous. They weren't always lead stories in the media, but they were there. And as an old justice guy, I said, something's wrong with that. And then you start piecing it together, and it was clear that, in my view, based on media reports, that there had been an October application, a June or July application during the beginning of the general election for president, at FISA court involving Trump World or Trump or somebody on Trump's staff. It was unclear. And then there was apparently a second application, and I talked about it at the time, in October, shortly before the general election. And then there were other things that took place in the intelligence area with respect to incidental collection of intelligence on American citizens, many of whom happen to be in Trump World, and the leaking or unmasking of that information. And you were starting to put this information together and go, what the hell? We have police state tactics going on here like we've never seen before. Domestic political surveillance taking place. And what was shocking was the extent to which the media first reported it and then reversed course and started to attack anybody, particularly me, who mentioned it. Now, why would they do that? Because a number of reasons. Number one, they're protecting their sources. Number two, they hate Trump. And number three, they're an appendage of the Democrat Party. That's why I call them the Praetorian Guard media. What are they guarding? They're guarding the progressive movement and the progressive party, which is the Democrat Party. Now, let's dig in. Go ahead. Purpose. This memorandum provides members an update on significant facts relating to the committee's ongoing investigation into the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation and their use of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act during the 2016 presidential election cycle. Our findings, which are detailed below, go ahead. 1. You know what? Let me wait right there. When I wasn't here, I believe it was on Friday, on my social media sites, having watching this from afar, even right before the release of the memo, I indicated that the Democrats were somewhat schizophrenic, making two arguments at the same time. On the one hand, they were arguing, don't release the memo. Don't classified information. FBI says they're gravely concerned. You'll give up sources and methods. Don't release the memo. And then they were saying, the hell, nothing in the memo. I mean, they're just spin. It's Nunes doing his thing. Then the memo's released, and it's, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? Lying right to the end, lying to the American people right to the end. It's incredible. And the media mouthing exactly what the Democrats tell them to mouth, and the media, which is supposed to be skeptical of government, working with the government. Their sources, the highest levels of the FBI. Who's leaked at the FBI? Comey, McCabe, the former number 2, Strzok, his girlfriend Paige, and there are others. There's 2 or 3 others. And this is what we know, as a matter of fact. It's like finding out what the special counsel's office is doing by reading the New York Times, the Washington Post, or watching CNN. Same thing. Number 1, raise concerns with the legitimacy and legality of certain Department of Justice and FBI interactions with the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. And 2, represent a troubling breakdown of legal processes established to protect the American people from abuses related to the FISA process. Now, that seems like a responsible thing to do if the committee found those things, to present them to the American people. Next. On October 21, 2016, DOJ and FBI sought and received a FISA probable cause order up under Title VII, authorizing electronic surveillance on Carter Page from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. Page is a U.S. citizen who served as a volunteer advisor to the Trump presidential campaign. Consistent with requirements under FISA, the application had to next be first certified by the director or deputy director of the FBI, Comey and or McCabe. It then required the approval of the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, Sally Yates, or the Senate-confirmed Assistant Attorney General for the National Security Division. And by the way, I bet you all of them knew what was going on. I mean, this was big league. This was big stuff. Now they're going to get into the Trump team. They're going to get into a volunteer or temporary advisor into Trump world. Trust me, they all knew about it. Trust me, the President of the United States knew about it. The Valerie Jarrett, his doorman knew about it, or doorwoman. The director of the National Security, Susan Rice, Deputy Director Ben Rhodes. The President gets, as I keep saying, a presidential daily intelligence briefing. There is no way that if you're going to seek and secure a FISA warrant a probable cause that a member of Trump's team, volunteer, part-time, of no consequence. The fact is, a member of Trump's team is going to be surveilled by the United States government as an agent of Russia. That's probable cause. Agent. They need to be an agent of a foreign power. You cannot tell me that the President of the United States didn't know that. Moreover, as I said, that weekend and that March, we know the President knew some of this. How? It was in the newspapers. How? I read it to you. Let's go on. The FBI and Department of Justice obtained one initial FISA warrant targeting Carter Page and 3 FISA renewals, we didn't know about this, from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court. As required by statute, a FISA order on an American citizen must be renewed by the FISC, the judge, every 90 days, and each renewal requires a separate finding of probable cause. So they have to find over and over and over again that Carter Page or whomever they're surveilling is an agent. In this case, a Russian agent. And let's stop. Has it been proven anywhere that Carter Page, I don't know who this guy is, I don't know a damn thing about him, but has it been demonstrated that he's a Russian agent somehow, somewhere? If so, why hasn't he been charged yet? Or where's the evidence? Then Director James Comey signed 3 FISA applications in question on behalf of the FBI, and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe signed 1. Sally Yates, then acting Deputy Attorney General, Dana Bonte, and Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein each signed 1 or more FISA applications on behalf of justice. Now, let's wait there. Look at all the people who are involved. This is a group of people, many of whom, if not most of whom, were leaking. And they were leaking about what they were doing, which is how I found out about it. And they thought what they were doing is this propaganda campaign, this disinformation campaign that so entrenched is Trump world in collusion and other conspiracies with Russia and Vladimir Putin and so forth. Look at this. We got a FISA warrant. Look at this. We tried it once. We got another one. Look at this. And so when I said, whoa, they got a FISA warrant? They got a FISA application, 2 applications? They got a warrant? They're investigating an opposition party, an opposition candidate, the transition of a candidate. Then was, whoa, hit the brakes and reverse course. Then it wasn't a matter of spreading that propaganda. It was a matter of spreading other propaganda. Let's go on to the next one. Due to the sensitive nature of foreign intelligence activity, FISA submissions, including renewals, before the FISC, the judge, are classified as such. The public's confidence in the integrity of the FISA process depends on the court's ability to hold the government to the highest standard, particularly as it relates to surveillance of American citizens. However, the rigor in protecting the rights of Americans, which is reinforced by the 90-day renewals of surveillance orders, is necessarily dependent on the government's production to the court of all material and relevant facts. This should include information potentially favorable, next, to the target of the FISA application that is known by the government. Keep something in mind here. There's no other party in front of the FISA judge. It's not a normal situation. You go into federal court typically, let's say a federal district court, you have 2 parties at least, sometimes more than 1. If you have the government involved, you have the government presenting its case, typically against an individual or organization or country, or what is it? And then you have a lawyer in there who represents the person who's being charged or the subject, and they get to present their side too. Well, in a FISA court, they don't, right? Because there's one party in there, it's the government. So the judge has to know that you're presenting a balanced case. So the judge can then make a decision, particularly as it applies to an American citizen, on whether or not to issue the FISA warrant. In the case of Carter Page, the government had at least 4 independent opportunities before the judge to accurately provide an accounting of the relevant facts. However, our findings indicate that, as described below, material and relevant information was omitted. Now, every sentence in this is crucially important. Every sentence in this, the Democrat Party did not want you to read. The FBI did not want you to read. the media did not want you to meet, which is hilarious since the media is fielding leaks constantly. Now they're concerned about classified information, of which there is none here. There's none classified information. The same New York Times, as I've said over the last few weeks, that published the Pentagon Papers and so forth, yes, they're very concerned, about leaks and classified information. Not. The dossier compiled by Christopher Steele, the Steele dossier, on behalf of the Democrat National Committee in the Hillary Clinton campaign, remember, they funded it through the Fusion GPS, formed an essential part of the Carter-Page FISA application. Now, this is a definitive statement that opposition research paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC, funding a foreign national, Christopher Steele, an ex-British spy, who contacted, worked with, and secured information from Kremlin apparatchiks, that this was used in part, if not whole, to persuade the judge to issue the warrant against Carter Page. Now, Steele was a longtime FBI source who was paid over $160,000 by the DNC and Clinton campaign via the law firm Perkins Coie and research firm Fusion GPS to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia. Neither the initial application in October 2016 nor any of the renewals disclose or reference the role of the DNC, Clinton campaign, or any party campaign in funding Steele's efforts, even though the political origins of the Steele dossier were then known to senior DOJ and FBI officials. This is damning. Comey knew, Lynch knew, Yates knew, Rosenstein would later know. They all knew. They all knew what the essential source was of this dossier. And they never mentioned it to the judge. Matter of fact, they didn't want to mention it to the judge. They wanted to use it. Go ahead. The initial FISA application notes Steele was working for a named U.S. person, but does not name Fusion GPS and Principal Glenn Simpson, who was paid by a U.S. law firm representing the DNC, even though it was known by DOJ at the time that political actors were involved with the Steele dossier. Now, how did they know that as we go on? Well, in part, you'll remember there's somebody on the Deputy Attorney General staff. This could be a novel. It'd be a great novel. It is a disaster for the country. There was an individual on the Deputy Attorney General staff, you'll remember, his name is Orr. His wife worked for Fusion GPS. His wife worked on this, in part, opposition research. He was working for Rod Rosenstein as recently as a few months ago. So here you have the guy who's serving on the staff of the second most powerful individual in the Department of Justice. You also had other political apparatchiks in the FBI and throughout the Department of Justice who knew exactly what they were doing. The application does not mention Steele was ultimately working on behalf of and paid by the DNC and the Clinton campaign, or that the FBI had separately authorized payment to Steele for the same information. Stop. Now, we know that, but this is the first, again, affirmation, unequivocal, definitive statement that took place. So the FBI was paying Steele for the same information, or at least they were authorized to pay Steele for the same information. Now, think about that. The same opposition research. Go ahead. Now, number two, the Carter-Page FISA application also cited extensively a September 23, 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff, which focuses on Page's July 2016 trip to Moscow. This article does not corroborate the Steele dossier because it is derived from information leaked by Steele himself to Yahoo News. Got that? So the FISA application also cited extensively September 23, 2016 Yahoo News article by Michael Isikoff. So this is information leaked by Steele to Isikoff and then used in the FISA court. The Page FISA application incorrectly assesses that Steele did not directly provide information to Yahoo News. Steele has admitted in British court filings that he met with Yahoo News and several other outlets, go ahead, in September 2016 at the direction of Fusion GPS. Now, the law firm involved, Perkins Coie, was aware of Steele's initial media contacts because they hosted at least one meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2016 with Steele and Fusion GPS where this matter was discussed. Now, hold it there. The lawyer involved for that law firm's name is Mark Elias. He was the bagman, if you will. He was the one, the go-between between the Hillary Clinton campaign, the DNC, and Fusion GPS, which was then the go-between when it came to Steele, the ex-British spy, and the Russians. So they were trying to cover all their tracks, trying to cover. But this guy, Mark Elias, is the lawyer who works for this law firm, and you can see that firm, and no doubt he, are hosting at least this one meeting in Washington, D.C., where they're trying to push this information out. So they're working the FBI, which is more than happy to take the information and use it at the FISA court. They're working the media. Many media outlets are more than happy to have this information. And you can see then the massive disinformation campaign, right? The massive propaganda campaign that's taking place here about Trump and collusion. Trump world and collusion. And then the leaks start. It's because it is, again, a Soviet-style destruction campaign, character assassination campaign. Go ahead. Steele was suspended and then terminated as an FBI source for what the FBI defines as the most serious of violations, an unauthorized disclosure to the media of his relationship with the FBI in an October 30, 2016 Mother Jones article by David Korn. Steele should have been terminated for his previous undisclosed contacts with Yahoo and other outlets in September before the Page application was submitted to the judge in October. But Steele improperly concealed from and lied to the FBI about those contacts. Now, this is really, keep it there, really very interesting and ironic in a sick way. So he's removed because he's a leaker. Not because he leaked to Yahoo, but because he leaked to Mother Jones and then lied to them about his leak, that is the FBI. Now, Comey's a leaker, McCabe's a leaker, Stork's, what's his name, Stork is a leaker, Page is a leaker, Stroke, whatever his name is, too many consonants for me. And the bottom line is, this guy eventually gets the axe because he's a leaker. So there's an enormous amount of leaking going on at the top levels of the FBI, all intended to smear Trump, the Trump campaign, and Trump surrogates with this Russia stuff. And even to today, to this day, there's no evidence of collusion by Donald Trump and his campaign with the Russians, none whatsoever. This was an elaborate ruse, police state tactics that involved the surveillance, the use for domestic and political purposes of our intelligence agencies and the FBI and the FISA court. It's really quite remarkable. Next. Steele's numerous encounters with the media violated the cardinal rule of source handling, maintaining confidentiality, and demonstrated that Steele had become a less than reliable source for the FBI. And yet, the irony is the director of the FBI is no better. He was a serial leaker, too. Next. Before and after Steele was terminated as a source, he maintained contact with DOJ via then Associate Deputy Attorney General Bruce Orr, this is the fellow I mentioned earlier, a senior Justice Department official who worked closely with Deputy Attorneys General Yates. Remember Sally Yates? She became the acting Attorney General, and she refused to enforce the president's refugee executive order. Remember that? Remember the number 2 in the special counsel's office, this guy Andrew Weissman? Before he became the deputy there, he was also a big Democrat operative. He went to the Hillary Clinton Victory Fund. Unfortunately for them, there was no victory to their party. He, that is Weissman, was all thrilled that Yates had stood up to Trump and refused to enforce the law. He's now the number 2 special counsel prosecutor. Anyway, shortly after the election, the FBI began interviewing Orr, documenting his communications with Steele. So here you have somebody on the Deputy Attorney General's staff whose wife is working for Fusion GPS, working on this Oppo research against Trump, and keeping in touch with Steele, who is the guy Fusion GPS hired to do this dossier. So you've got leaking going on at the highest levels of the FBI. You've got Steele working with the highest levels of the FBI for a period of time. You've got Steele's connection with this top official on the Deputy Attorney General's staff over at the Department of Justice. Go. For example, in September 2016, this is all the lead up, right up to the election in November, early November. Steele admitted to Orr his feelings against then-candidate Trump when Steele said he was desperate that Donald Trump not get elected and was passionate about him not being president, quote, unquote, pretty much like the top levels of the FBI. Stroke and Page, their texts were very, very similar, weren't they? That's Page, Stroke and Page. And remember, McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI, his wife is a big liberal Democrat who ran for office in Virginia and got over $500,000 of support from the Clinton operative, the then governor, McAuliffe. This clear evidence of Steele's bias was recorded by Orr at the time and subsequently in official FBI files, but not reflected in any of the Page FISA applications. So they withheld all this crucial information from the FISA court. You want to know why? If the FISA judge has even an ounce of objectivity and saw all this political intrigue going on, all these political connections, they never would have gotten their warrant. They never would have gotten their extension. Multiple extensions on the warrants. No way. Go ahead. During the same time period, Orr's wife was employed by Fusion GPS to assist in the cultivation of opposition research on Trump, as we discussed. Orr later provided the FBI with all of his wife's opposition research, paid for by the DNC and Clinton campaign via Fusion GPS. The Orr's relationship with Steele and Fusion GPS was inexplicably concealed from the FISA judge. I cannot tell you how important this memo is for confirming many of the things we know and adding additional information. I cannot tell you how serious it is, what's being stated in this memo. I cannot tell you how serious it is that the Democrat Party has been running an obstruction campaign and a smear campaign against this man, Nunes. I cannot tell you how disgraceful it is for the media, almost in lockstep, giving support and even guidance to what the FBI and Department of Justice and the others have done and protecting their own leakers. They know exactly what's going on here. And yet the ends for the Democrat Party, the senior levels of the FBI and intelligence agencies and the media are the same. First, they hope to stop Trump. Then they hope to destroy Trump. Now they hope to remove Trump. According to the head of the Counterintelligence Division, Assistant Director Bill Priestap, corroboration of the Steele dossier was in its infancy at the time of the initial Page FISA application. After Steele was terminated, a source validation report conducted by an independent unit within FBI assessed Steele's reporting as only minimally corroborated. Yet in early January 2017, Director Comey briefed President-elect Trump on a summary of the Steele dossier, even though it was, according to his June 2017 testimony, salacious and unverified. Now let's wait there. So why would Comey brief Trump on a summary of the Steele dossier, even though he said half a year earlier that it was salacious and unverified? Why do you think so? Think about it. Why would he do that? I'll tell you why I think so. He's letting Trump know, I've got this document. It's salacious and unverified, as he testified before. But when he sees Trump, the president-elect earlier says, I have this document. Now, why would he want Trump to know that he has it? Anybody here know? He could blackmail him. I hate to say that. He could theoretically say, I have this document, don't mess with me. And in the end, Trump did mess with him, and look what happened. A special counsel's investigated. They keep throwing the phrase obstruction of justice around, and so forth. Next. While the FISA application relied on Steele's past record of credible reporting on other unrelated matters, it ignored or concealed his anti-Trump financial and ideological motivations. Furthermore, Deputy Director McCabe testified before the committee in December 2017 that no surveillance warrant would have been sought from the FISA court without the Steele dossier information. Now, if you're a Levin TV watcher, you already knew this, because I made the point time and again that if they had not used the Steele dossier in any FISA application, they would have said so. They would have said so, because it would not have been classified, right? It would not have been classified to say, we did not use the dossier in any of our FISA applications. So when they refused to even say that, I knew they had used it. Just a matter of common sense. Next. Number 5, the Page FISA application also mentions information regarding fellow Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos, but there's no evidence of any cooperation or conspiracy between Page and Papadopoulos. What they're trying to show here is that the main reason they were able to get this FISA warrant and these extensions had nothing to do with Papadopoulos, had nothing to do with anyone else or anything else. It was largely based on the dossier, and that had to be what convinced the judge to issue the warrant based on this application. The Papadopoulos information triggered the opening of an FBI counterintelligence investigation in late July 2016 by Agent Pete Strzok. Now we know who this guy is. Strzok was reassigned by the special counsel's office to FBI Human Resources for improper text messages, next, with his mistress, FBI attorney Lisa Page, no known relation to Carter Page, where they both demonstrated a clear bias against Trump and in favor of Clinton, whom Strzok had also investigated. The Strzok-Lisa Page texts also reflect extensive discussions about the investigation, orchestrating leaks to the media, and include a meeting with Deputy Director McCabe to discuss an insurance policy against President Trump's election. Now that's the memo. Now, can anybody tell me how any of this, as the Democrats said, would hurt our national security by the nature of the revelation? No, I can't tell you. Can anybody tell us exactly what might have been classified in here? I can't tell you, because nothing's classified in here. Can anybody tell me why the FBI director, Wray, the new one, said that he had grave concerns about the release of this memo? Why? Other than concern that the FBI might be exposed. Now, here's the thing. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is the tip of the iceberg. We need to see, the American people, the FISA applications. Now, if there is classified information in these applications, and let me suggest to you there probably ain't much, go ahead and redact it out. That's a funny term for it. Cross it out. We don't need to see classified information. We'll read the rest of it. That doesn't mean you black out every page and pretend that you've, it's all classified. But let's see it, or them. That's number one. Let's see the daily presidential briefings, and this is my point. This is just the tip of the iceberg. The senior level of the FBI and certain individuals of the Justice Department, who do they work for? Who do they think they work for? Who do they think they're helping by doing all this? Well, Hillary Clinton and the Democrat Party, but the Obama administration. And why can't we mention the name Obama? The issue is, what did Obama know? Was he advised by anybody? Did Jim Comey ever meet with him to discuss any of this? Jim Comey likes to meet with people. Did he meet with him? How about the Attorney General of the United States, who met on the tarmac in Phoenix at their airport to inform Bill Clinton that the coast was clear? You're telling me she didn't talk to Obama either? How about Sally Yates, the highly partisan political deputy attorney general who signed at least one of the FISA court extensions? Did she not tell the President of the United States? You have the Attorney General who knew, the Deputy Attorney General knew, the FBI Director knew, the Deputy FBI Director knew, other agents working for them knew. They all knew. Nobody told the White House. Nobody told Susan Rice. Nobody told Ben Rhodes. Nobody told Valerie Jarrett. Nobody told Barack Obama directly. Nobody said a word to him. And even if they didn't say a word to him, are you telling me that in the daily presidential briefings, that when his people go to the FISA court, it's the Foreign intelligence surveillance court. These are counterintelligence investigations. You just secured a warrant against the opposition campaign, against the person you endorsed. You're telling me the President of the United States is not informed about that? Even if there's political fallout or blowout, wouldn't you want him to know? Of course you'd want him to know. Why would you keep it from him if you don't think you're doing something wrong? And of course, the President had to know some of this the same way I knew about it on March 2nd. It was in the media. You start pulling it together, right? Are you telling me the President didn't ask a damn thing about it? Hey, Valerie, what's this about? Do we have a FISA request out there against Trump? Hey, Valerie, do we have 2 FISA requests out there against Trump? Hey, Valerie, what's this with the New York Times story? And what's this with the McClatchy story? Hey, Valerie, he doesn't know? I happen to know that the President receives top-level news clips and information every single morning and evening. He doesn't read them, so he doesn't know anything. FBI director doesn't tell him. Deputy director doesn't tell him. Attorney General doesn't tell him. Deputy Attorney General doesn't tell him. Nobody tells him. The intelligence agencies kept it secret from him? No, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it for a minute. Now, this explains everything, doesn't it? Mark, what are you talking about? The cover-up explains. Who are they covering up for? Do you think they give a damn about Peter Strzok? Or Lisa Page? Lisa, I believe that's her name. Or do you think they give a damn about this guy, McCabe? Or even Comey at this point? You think they care about Loretta Lynch or Sally Yates? Why are the Democrats, the Democrat Party, in unison? Why are they so insistent here, circling the wagons and circling them, making no sense whatsoever, aggressively attacking Trump, aggressively attacking anybody who raises this, going after Nunes and so forth? Why are they doing all this? Why would the Praetorian Guard media, to a man and woman virtually, be spinning, look so foolish, but spinning, it doesn't matter? Doing the dirty work for the Democrats. I know you're saying, well, they always do, but something's different here. Something's different here. It's more aggressive, it's more vicious than in most cases. We talked right here on Levin TV, didn't we, about the pushback, like, whoa, we must have touched something hot. They didn't care about Comey and all the rest. They hated Comey. A second before Trump fired Comey, they hated Comey too. He fired him and they said, oh, let's use Comey to get Trump. No, I think this is a big-time cover-up to prevent you and me from knowing what Obama knew. I'm not saying he gave direct orders on this side or the other. I have no way of knowing any of that. But I think they wanted to protect and still want to protect Obama from you and me finding out the extent of his knowledge beyond public reports that I was reading. I think that's what's going on here. And I'll tell you what else I think. And I've talked about this before. We absolutely need a special counsel to get to the bottom of this. If this memo, this courageous memo, does anything, it should instigate the appointment of a special counsel. I don't know where Jeff Sessions is on this, but it needs to be done. This isn't about Russia. This is about corruption at the highest levels of our government, whether the Democrats want to see it or not. Number two, and it's funny, I had said to my wife on Friday when this came out that we need a commission of top former officials who have absolute, complete integrity to also look into this. And I mentioned it, and then apparently Dershowitz mentioned something similar to it over the weekend. But he's right, and I'm right. We need a blue ribbon commission, as they call them. You know, Washington has these commissions all the time. Well, here we need one. Maybe 5 individuals. Keep it tight. Chaired by perhaps somebody like a former Attorney General Ed Meese, and having other former Attorneys General on there who would look into this for the purpose of figuring out not only what happened at the FBI and Justice Department, and I would argue at the White House and other agencies, fact-finding without the power to criminalize their activities, that is, so they can just help make policy decisions, but also to try and figure out how to prevent this in the future. That needs to be done. So I would argue for these two things, and I think they are essential. Now, it's not unprecedented for this sort of thing to happen at the FBI. The extent of this, I think, is unprecedented. I really do. But we've had deputy FBI directors leak in the past. You've heard of Deep Throat and Watergate. Well, he was the deputy FBI director. His name was Mark Felt, F-E-L-T. Not long before he passed away, he lived to be 95, he said, "I'm Deep Throat." I don't know how you proudly say I'm Deep Throat, but he apparently did. He was very proud of the leaks that he was involved in, which of course were criminal. And the funny thing is, he was the traffic cop in all the Watergate criminal investigating going on. He was the deputy director of the FBI, that was his charge, so he knew everything that was taking place, and he would turn around and give that information to Woodward and Bernstein. And Woodward and Bernstein got Pulitzer Prizes for being basically stenographers. It's not like they're great reporters. They gathered information. I mean, what better contact do you need than that? Than the number 2 guy at the FBI who has all the information, is more than happy to give it to you. Mark Felt. But Mark Felt has been romanticized over the year, that he was trying to look out for the FBI. He was very upset as an ethical matter what the President Nixon and his cronies have been doing and so forth and so on, which is sort of the same spiel we get with this crowd. But there was a book written by an author by the name of Max Holland. And Max Holland said, no, that's not what happened. He did enormous research, very objective journalist. He did enormous research. He looked at the special prosecutor information at the time. He looked at the news articles at the time. He interviewed a whole slew of people at the time. You know why Mark Felt was leaking all this information against the Nixon administration during Watergate? He was furious that Nixon passed over him and picked somebody else to be director of the FBI. He felt that was his. He should have been director of the FBI, and he was going to settle a score with the president. And he did. And the president was forced to resign because they were going to impeach him and then likely remove him in the United States Senate. That's what happened. That was Mark Felt. So it's not the first time this sort of thing has taken place, but it is absolutely diabolical what's been taking place at the highest levels of the FBI. And this memo, what else really, I mean, there's a number of things this fascinating memo draws your attention to. But Comey, that Comey is signing off on the FISA applications, that Comey was aware of the dossier, that Steele, the author of the dossier, while Comey was the FBI director, was on the FBI's payroll for a period of time before they got rid of him, obviously. The bottom line is the buck stops with Comey. His deputy director was McCabe. Stroke and Page worked under him. The leaking was occurring under him and by him. The FISA applications went forward to the extent we are aware of when they occurred with his consent. The cover-up for Hillary Clinton, 2 months before they even bothered to interview her, where they were trying to protect her with the different iterations of the memo, Comey. Comey is at the center of all this. And then, of course, Comey leaks information, and the Senate Judiciary Committee, Grassley and Graham say he clearly leaked memos that had classified information. And of course, the media is very concerned about that, aren't they? And he says he had that initial leak through his law professor buddy, who's now his attorney, so he can cover himself with attorney-client privilege, that is Comey, and they leaked it to the New York Times. He said he did that because he wanted the appointment of a special counsel. So in many ways, Comey is Deep Throat as it applies to the so-called Russia collusion situation. Except there is no Trump-Russia collusion situation. There is a Hillary Clinton, DNC, FBI collusion situation. And that's what we need to get to the bottom of. And I might add, Obama White House collusion situation. Finally, let's always remember this. The Russians clearly did try to interfere with our election. They clearly did. They failed to tip the balance. But under whose eyes were the Russians interfering with our election? Barack Obama. What did he do about it? Clearly not enough. Did he inform the American people? No. So he was so concerned about what the Russians were doing, he kept silent. Now, why did he do that? Because he thought Hillary Clinton was going to win in a cakewalk, and he didn't want you to think that the Russians helped her win. That's why he did it. Anyway, there's a lot to digest here. You can go back and listen from the beginning to the end of the show. We're not done talking about this because to me, as I say, this is just the tip of the iceberg and we're going to stay on. That's it.